Hello and welcome into the Section 109 podcast. Matthew, we are back from Studio Breezy. There are no Mix and Toby today, sadly. They're still at my parents' house. I wish they were back too, but couldn't work it out to get them back last night. But we are here, and we are going to record. You know what I did not ask? Hey, wifey, do you want your computer? All right. Ella does not want her computer, so I am safe here to use her computer. I realize I might monopolize it for however long we record here, but we are here to talk about some news, which just broke fortuitously about an hour before we podcasted. So that is very lucky for once, actually 2 hours now. And also talk about the season that was, a little more of an analytical review, which we did last year, and I think was really fun. And so we're going to try our best to be a little less emotional about it and try to review a little more by the numbers. And then I'm sure we'll have some emotional takes in it as well. Does that sound fair to you, Matthew?
Let's do it.
All right. Why don't you choose where we start?
Do you want the sad part?
We didn't make the playoffs?
Yeah, we finished 9th. So in the last podcast we did, I just had to start off there.
Thanks for that, Matthew.
In the last podcast we did in Toronto, which was our first ever international podcast.
And first ever international game.
We recorded the emergency episode talking about the game in Toronto, the decision to let Rod go, promoting Chris to the interim head coach, what we saw that was different in that game. And then, we kind of left it with, well, you're going to go to Romania for a little while.
And that I did.
And we'll play the game on the weekend against Red Bulls on decision day. It determines what our season is and is not. And
it did.
And it did. And the season ended. And 2 hours ago
that was not for 2 hours ago. That was for the season ending.
2 hours ago, at time of recording, Chris Nugent has been promoted to be the new permanent head coach of CFC.
The interim label has been removed.
Yeah. So, there's some stuff that we'll talk about.
We have some mailbag questions that we could go to right now, by the way, if we want to.
Oh, Jesus. There's some stuff that we will talk about in reference, because I think that matters. I assume that means player news is coming rather soon. A little birdie has told us that those meetings have all wrapped up and that kind of everybody involved
and for anyone
knows what's going on.
For anyone who doesn't know, at the end of every season, there are one-on-one meetings, or maybe like a couple people, the coaching staff, whatever, but it's one player at a time generally, and they have a meeting on what's your future, what we want to do, what we're going to do. Let's say you have an option on their contract. You say, hey, player X, we're gonna let your option. Hey, player Y, in the next meeting, we're not going to activate your option. Player Z, we're going to X, Y, and Z.
I think those meetings actually kind of took place in two separate categories. It's a little different. It's a little different when the head coach is gone, which sometimes happens. So you don't necessarily have. Sometimes you want the coaching staff, all of the technical staff, out of the room for meetings like that. But then you have other people in to talk about whatever. So.
Matthew, we don't have a sporting director and we don't have a head coach.
We have a head coach.
Well, we didn't at the time of those meetings. So I'm going to assume either Chris was acting as head coach and in those meetings along with whoever else was doing them, or it was a myriad of people, because I think normally it would be either the head, in the past to be the head coach Rod doing the meeting, and sporting director at the time, sporting director and head coach Rod. In the past, it would have been Peter and Jeremy. Now my guess is that it was some combination of several different people, because there's not just one person. And
Bill was also involved when it was Peter and Jeremy.
Beautiful.
And then it would have just been Jeremy in the offseason, the 2021 end of offseason.
Yes, after they fired Peter Fuller. So my point is, I would be willing to bet a lot of money that it was not just one person in all those meetings.
So what I want to do is not do mailbag. I think mailbag should be towards the end. Okay. I want to talk about the season, and then we'll take some mailbag questions that relate to the season. Then we'll take some mailbag questions that relate to the news.
Okay. Congrats, Chris. So happy to have you. It's going to be...
And we'll need to have you back on to reprise his appearance from 3 years ago.
I think it's reprise.
It probably is. In a different role.
I know. I need to go back and listen. We talked about this actually like earlier today. Like I need to go back and listen to our previous podcast now to find out what he wants to do.
Well, and I think
Meaning
something I remember from the previous podcast is that his role at the time was to use data to help fulfill what Rod's vision for the team, how Rod wanted to play, all of those types of things. He said something to the effect of, and this is why we need to go listen, that, he's got his own ideas, but like that's not his job. His job is to help fulfill the head coaches.
And so you and I remember that differently. I remember it up until the point. Yeah, I remember it similarly, but I'm not sure he has very particular ideas on what is best. I think he is much more flexible to work with any sort of option. But I need to go back and listen and find out. And then we also need to ask him questions because
and he's going to have to make some.
He wasn't head coach at the time, so you never know if he was saying things that were diplomatically true but less like aggressive because you don't undermine your boss. Like if he says like, I think it's best to play like on the break, high press, very direct, possession's dumb, and your boss is like obsessed with control and possession, and that is his like philosophy on soccer and on life, which Rod had said many times. Like you don't say that, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's what he's going to be into because I don't know. I know what we saw last two games. But that doesn't mean that's what he had Rod's roster. Well, he had his and Rod's roster. Obviously, he was, I'm sure, a part of creating that. But it's very interesting. But those are topics to dive into very deeply another day.
Yeah, another day. So we'll have to wait. We'll have to let roster news happen, and then we'll talk about who's going, who's staying, who's under contract, all those things. We'll say goodbyes. And that'll kind of like close those chapters. So let's get into the season.
I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
The league, we finished 9-9-10. So 9 wins, 9 losses, and 10 draws.
Yeah.
In the Open Cup, we exited in the first round.
That's the nicest way I could put it.
You did. I think it might have been technically the second round, but
it was not. It was the first round.
But here's my question for you. We're going to save our season ratings or on the field, off the field ratings where we do a thing at the end of the season.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, rather, or around New Year's time. But I would like to know, what would you grade our on the field in a to F, A, B, C, D, E, F, our overall on the field for the season? Not at different parts, not defense, not offense, combined. The way we finished, whether it was not making the playoffs, exiting the first, however you're thinking about it.
C's get degrees, but they don't make the playoffs. I think it's a C. You could quibble with me. Is it a C minus? Is it a C plus? Would have a tiebreaker or one extra point, some random place showing up, putting us into the playoffs, and like even maybe making us finish 6th or something stupid, like would that have been enough to give a B minus out of it? And like maybe, but like it's just broadly a solid C.
Interesting. I'm struggling with this question that I just asked.
Like it's not good enough. I'm not going to just like straight up give a failure grade because I don't think it was a failure. Transition years are very, very hard as an existing team.
Mm-hmm.
And managing that, especially for a kind of a relatively new league, that was extremely, the basis of the league was the MLS 2 teams that were playing in USL, who were extremely young. And I mean like ridiculously young. It was like academy players combined with first team players that would occasionally get dropped down. And overall, especially in the later years, in the 2019, 2020, 2021, like those kind of years, those teams got killed a lot in USL. Now, in 2019, North Texas won USL League One and did so kind of handily. Red Bulls 2.
Shout out Ricardo Pepi.
Yeah. Red Bulls 2, like won USL championship in like their first or second year.
2018, I think.
What? Maybe it was 2018. Like, but like there were as USL got better,
that model didn't work.
These teams no longer were just like good enough to roll out some stuff and roll out some kids and hope for the best. And then there was all kinds of, crazy shit about MLS trying to buy USL and, USL trying to extract every last dollar out of MLS before they go right off to the sunset and probably into the Soccer Hall of Fame and all that, typical soccer Wild West drama bullshit. And so MLS Next Pro gets created, and then a bunch of teams that did not have two teams created them. And that first year, and critically, the thing that is fundamentally different about Next Pro, than the MLS 2 teams were in USL, is the requirement, the league mandated requirement that everyone that's an MLS 2 team has to carry at least 11 players on Next Pro specific contracts.
I thought it was 14.
It's 11.
Okay. I would have preferred it was 14.
What that does is it forces you not to just have a bunch of academy players and then some first team guys that are on the supplemental roster or need to get some minutes here or there or whatever.
Yes.
That is so like, are teams using the Next Pro contracts as kind of stepping stones for a first pro deal for some of their academy players?
Of course.
Yes.
Should they? Yes.
Absolutely.
Of course. It's how development should work.
And are those players...
By the way, we should have a reserve team. And we should sign guys to that team
let's get that
out of our academy. Not yet, but I'm just saying, like, that's how clubs work. You have a reserve team, you sign guys in their first deal. Fuck yeah.
But like also a bunch of those players in that Next Pro contract stage are not just like 17 years old on their first pro deal. They're 20 or 22 or 24, sometimes on their first pro deal, sometimes on like their third or fourth. And what that's done overall, it's not just like Carolina Core's like age profile for their team, the only other independent team in the league. Their age profile is about the same as everybody else's, all the MLS 2 teams, right?
Well, they signed all of Houston's former players, so they're Houston 3. So yes, of course they're the same.
So we are really the outlier in terms of age profile.
Yes.
We are one of 29. We're not going to like do some crazy... we're not going to do anything crazy in terms of like totally like flipping the age profile of the league, right? Age profile's up to average age is up to 21 now in Next Pro. So like the interpretation, or I guess the projection that it's like a league for academy players just kind of isn't true anymore. And what that's done, because that age profile and the average age is risen each of the 3 years in the league. I guess it didn't rise at all the first year when they established the setting, but it's rose the last 2 years. And what that's done has made it extremely more competitive. You've got like not just like high-end talent, but young, but also like good depth of talent. And I think that's clearly been an adjustment. And I'm not sure, hindsight is extremely 2020, but I thought this back in June when we were like second in the league or whatever it was. You know, we were looking how things were starting to play out, looking at the underlying numbers, and had some serious question marks about like, this league is a lot better than we knew it was going to be a big step up, right? We knew it was going to be a huge step up from NISA, but the league was even better than I think we were ready for, at least from the outside looking in. And I don't see that stopping. I think the league's going to get another step better next year. I don't think do I think the average age of the league is ever going to rise to like 24? No. But I do think it might tick up a share in 2025. And that's something we're going to have to be prepared for. And it's also something that we're going to have to possibly contribute a little bit too. Because you can argue, and we'll do this after roster decisions, but you can argue that like, is our age profile, which is a clear statistical outlier anomaly compared to the rest of the league, is being that much of an outlier a good thing or not? And that is maybe a question for others on a different day. Breezy, I gave a C and then talked for like 25 minutes.
Yes, you did.
What's your letter grade?
So I was looking through, and I'll give you trying to look through Michael's spreadsheet, which I want to talk about. And I was trying to figure out where exactly we finished. And I can't seem to find it. But basically, here we go. I need to, I guess, read more through his stuff. But like here's where I'm at. 45 points. I'll give you. So I have an interesting category I think later on that you haven't looked through, which is like random facts from the statistical page.
I've not looked through.
So that's just good. We have 45 points, which would have tied us for 5th in the West and did tie us for 6th in the East. But we finished outside of the playoffs. We did not go on a deep Open Cup run. We did not make the playoffs. That, unfortunately, for me is a D. We were just outside the playoffs. And if we make the playoffs, it's a C plus or even a B minus or a B or whatever it is. But the reason it's not a B, the reason it's not a we got 6 extra points from shootout wins. We were 6 of 8 without late game.
8 of 10.
8 of 10, even more so. 8 of 10.
I found the stat you were looking for, by the way. We would have been 10th. Carolina and us would have switched. Spots.
So we only finished one up from where. So like, but still, we needed, if we go, for example, if we go 50-50, which is what luck says we probably should have gone, because most of the time penalty shootouts are just a crapshoot.
3 points.
3 points, and we're well outside of the playoffs.
Yeah.
The only reason we were there is because of late game heroics, basically. We just weren't good enough this year on the field. And if we had gone on the deep Open Cup run, I could have like salvaged a little bit of like, we made this really deep run here and then like whatever else. We just weren't good enough. It's not an F. C minuses might be the most fair, but I'm giving us a D plus or a C minus. Call it whichever one you want. I realize one is, but I don't want to give us what is technically a passing grade because the basic was make the playoffs. Stretch goal was to get a home game, but to make the playoffs. And even though we finished tied for 6th, and in the West, we would have been in 5th place, tied for 5th. It doesn't matter.
My parents instilled in me that
one more point.
C's might give you a pass on the term sheet, but it wasn't a pass with them, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, and so if we were to use the same grading scale, which we're not, cool. I'm cool with a C minus.
Yeah.
So if we want to say like, we're going to split the difference and use the same grading scale and I'll use yours, I agree with the logic of a C minus. But it's not. It's a D plus for me because I would say that C's are slightly more acceptable. But we'll figure out towards the end of the year. But it's because when I went back and looked at the, I thought your side of it, and then I just thought mine, and my side is it can't be a passing grade.
So like it
for strictly on the field stuff.
It wasn't good enough.
And I know it's 1 point away. I know we picked up 10 but we had to pick up 10 of our last 12 just to get there. We were so bad in the middle of the season, and let's get on and talk about it. Let's go through and talk about that. And we ran really hot at the beginning to give us this like lead that we then pissed away. But like, man, it's just we weren't good enough. And
yeah,
and for whatever reason that was the case. And so whether you call it a C minus or a D plus, we had to make the playoffs. And I know we came 1 point away, but at the end of the day, if making playoffs is the goal and you don't finish in the playoffs, and we didn't have the tiebreakers on wins to do it.
So let me ask you a question. You're flirting with the D plus C minus distinction, but
I don't want to give the C letter grade.
Use my.
A C is not good enough.
Yeah, use
then
my
it's a C minus.
Use my scale.
Then it's a C minus.
So C minus is agreeable for this year. What if like weird tiebreaker shit happened and we made the playoffs?
It's good enough. It's a C. It would have been a flat C for me. Just flat C for me. Because if we made the playoffs, then, or even maybe a C plus, probably not a C. It would depend how it went. If we would have gotten to 6th off the last day with the weird tiebreaker stuff, I probably would have given us a C plus.
If that ball doesn't tuck nicely, perfectly into the back of the net, like in the corner, and just like hits the post instead and goes out, and we win that game 1-0, you're giving us like we make the playoffs in like 6th place. And you're giving us a...
We would have been really lucky to make 6th place, which would have either been C or C+. It would not have been a B. It would not have been a B. Now, if we go on... That's just making and losing in the first round. If we then go on... Because I assume we would have lost the following week because we have not been playing that well. If we go win a playoff game, it becomes a B.
Which is why you have to make the playoffs, by the way, because you have a chance to salvage anything.
If we would have got a home game, by the way, it would have been... an A- or an A.
I would have given a home game in a playoffs an A, no questions asked.
And that would have been even losing that first home game. I would have given us an A.
Yeah.
Now, right? Because those are like it matters like where you finish for like that question.
So I guess here's my biggest point about
we can agree
a letter grade for performance on the field. We are literally talking about the difference in a Malik Dembele left-footed shot, tucking in the corner or hitting the post and coming out to be the difference between us in the playoffs and not. And I realize there's 6,000 other examples of like little tiny moments throughout the season, right? That's how this works. But like that is the definition of changing the way you think, and this is sports, so it happens, but it's the definition of changing the way you think based on a small sample size event.
It's not, though, because that whole season culminated with a lot of small and a lot of big chances in us missing it. It doesn't matter that we missed it on the final day. We also missed it on every goal that we missed that should have given us an extra point.
There's a question about drop points that we consider like dropped.
So, by the way, our
in the mailbag,
our season ended, and you and
I've
both
got 10 of them down here.
You and I both know this. Our season ended
in Miami,
in Atlanta, at Atlanta home. If we win that game, yes, it ended in Miami.
Yeah, yes, but like
vibes-wise, it ended in Miami because we got our asses kicked. But like the Atlanta game is where we had to win. If we win that Atlanta game, it's 3 more points, and we don't have to have this crazy run to make the playoffs because we could have, because we're clearly and easily in the playoffs. We're probably finishing like fucking 5th or something. With the same results. Actually, if you had 3 points, you might finish in the fucking home games. But that is how small the margins are, but that's when our season ended. Like the Atlanta game was won against one of the worst teams in the league. We had to win, and we didn't. And that it just is what it is. And I know we got soccered and we got refereed and we got all the other things, but that's how soccer goes. You can go throughout the season and pick whatever dropped points you want, which we did, obviously, or you did going through it. But like it came down to the final day, so it feels like just a small sample size. But I'm grading on the entire, and the culmination of which is like if you got 100 questions on a test and you get 70, that's a C. And if you get 69, that's a D.
Right. So that one question, that one Malik Dembele shot in the corner versus hitting the post is a single question.
Or a Marcus Nagelstad save the goalkeeper saves, or a Taylor Gray that goes just wide, or you can use, or a ball that Gene saves that he shouldn't, or John Burke goes crossing and has no business being able to contort his body and get the ball that keeps us within 1 point. Like it is a game of inches, but all the inches culminate at the end.
Which is why I'm not going to like drastically change my letter grade based on making the playoffs or not, because the totality of the season was that we were kind of bad. And like individual players made a bunch of stunning individual moments to perpetually keep us in the thing somehow.
Let's go through this. We were bad offensively. We weren't bad defensively, but let's go through this.
Okay.
Let's go through this. Let's go through this.
So we're going to go through the season straight up, right?
Yes.
So we've broken this back into, we've broken this up into blocks again. And
do you want to talk through the goal scorers and assisters and all that stuff?
We'll come back.
Okay, cool. Go.
So block 1 begins with Huntsville at home. That's a 2-2 draw with a PK win.
Which was a theme for the season.
Yeah, and truly and honestly, like stolen points, and I loved every bit of it. Miami United at home in the Open Cup, 1-0 loss. We came back with FC Cincinnati at home. We won that 3-0, and that was not a 3-0 game, but a lovely win, especially to wash away the Open Cup.
Also, in this period of time, I don't know if you drew it. Did you draw it into how we performed or when we had our second preseason?
No, because I've got second preseason included in here. Still block one.
Because if you remember, just for folks that may not remember, we talked a lot about this during the season. We did not have all of our visas, all of our players, all of our guys. I mean, when I say visas hadn't been processed and we couldn't get guys cleared, and then we had injuries, then we had Mehdi and Ramadan. Like we had all these like things that make like small differences on like how many minutes someone can play or how many whatevers. And so I do think like we had a pretty positive block one.
Oh, I think block one. The reason why block one is because it was awesome.
And it was awesome because like we continued to make plays and players made plays. Even if on the cumulative we weren't as good as we probably.
Well, I think, and this was the point that Rod made midseason. Like in our block one, there's a lot of like, number one, just good play by us. There's also a lot of like the goals that we did concede were kind of like big chances, like some mistakes that like had an outsized influence. I mean, look at both of Huntsville's goals. It's a drop by a keeper, tap in. The second equalizing goal is just trying to play out under pressure instead of clearing, and it gets stolen and scored. Both of Miami's goals in the 6-2 game, which ultimately doesn't matter for the score line, were both massive chances,
yes,
which affect the XG.
Yep.
In New York City, we were just tired after 4 games in 16, 17 days.
With a depleted overall rosters, we didn't have numbers.
And so like, we just kind of cratered the first little bit of the second half before we made subs, and then we turned the game, but just couldn't get the winner across the line. But like overall, like we took care of business. We had our first loss in there, I guess our first league loss in there. But like we were doing the thing
before Miami was our worst loss of the season as far as performance.
Yeah, we were doing the thing overall. We were winning at the margins. We were winning some duels. And
one-on-one, the guys were getting it done. Whatever it came to beating their guy, to scoring the goal, to making the play, they made the play.
And so
making the block.
Miami 6-2, Huntsville away 1-0, which was a brilliant game. Atlanta away, losing 1-0 on a PK. Carolina Court at home 2-0 win. I go into block 2 and I separate it this way on purpose. Number one, I needed to separate it. just first off. But second off, Orlando at home, we beat the shit out of them. And we pissed it away. Not necessarily on their goal, but like their goal followed the line of like giving up a big goal here or there. But like just the amount of good stuff that we did not translate into actual goals in the back of the net was really, really good. And like very much a point dropped. And what happened from there, and why
we
block
won the
2
subsequent shootout
is block 2 is that you're starting to see like us not translate stuff into victory.
So players stopped making the plays they were making early on because some of those games we got, like you said, some of the times the other team was a little better than we were. And so it's like, boy, we snuck out of there or we got out of there. It wasn't a smash and grab, but it was like sometimes, like we didn't deserve to win by the numbers that Huntsville game, that first Huntsville game.
So we've got
the second Huntsville game necessarily.
So we've got 6 games in the league in block 1. 2 of those involved ties going to PKs. In block 2, I've got us down for, I think that's 7. And we went to PKs 4 times. So like we were translating wins into draws.
Yes.
And so like we were still picking up points. I mean, we had 1 PK loss against Chicago in block 2. It's Orlando at home 1-1 with a PK win. It's Inter Miami away, a 2-1 win. You'll remember the Mehdi cross, the Shoss, getting pulled down, and his cross just goes over the keeper and hits the bar and goes in.
Sir, that is an unbelievable chip. You need to watch your fucking tone.
You've got the Crown Legacy match away. That was a 4-1 loss, where we were out of it immediately. You have the Atlanta home game around Memorial Day, Was that around Memorial Day? Yeah, it was. That's a 2-2 draw with a PK win. You'll remember that we gave away the first goal just stupidly cheaply and then gave away a penalty in stoppage time with a 2-1 lead to piss that one away.
Which game was that?
Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
Memorial Day. The fifth game in that stretch is New England at home. That's a 1-0 win with a Medi bicycle kick.
And one that they dominated large
beat
portions.
The crap out of us until the red card.
But we drew a red card, and then we beat the shit out of them from then on, and we did what we had to do. It was a deserved 3 points? Yeah.
It was 3 points.
1-0. It was a deserved 3 points, but it was also like, if we don't get that red card, which we don't do revisionist history here, right? Like we drew the red card fair and square.
Yeah, it was the second yellow. Like there was,
and it was a really dumb foul. Like it's clearly, but I'm just saying, like if you don't get that done, you lose that game, and it wouldn't have, or we tie that game, and we're like, woo, glad we tied it, like because they were the better team that day.
Exactly. And like the New England game is, the New England game is actually really important here because that's going to be their last win for a while. And I also did not block these in terms of like, well, that was our last win for a while, block ends. I could have. But I wanted to go further. Chicago away, that's a 1-1 game with a PK loss. That was also our last PK loss of the season.
That was fun because I sprinted to the bar at halftime. I think I had a shot and a beer and then came sprinting back across the parking lot.
You were also late.
I was also on one.
Yeah, you were.
Also, at the beginning of the game, I definitely brought a beer in my pocket.
I think that was halftime.
Nah, it was at the beginning of the game because it
was halftime.
That I brought a beer back in?
Mm-hmm. Pretty sure. You were on one.
I don't think so. The reason I don't think so is because they had the whole tailgate set up at halftime, and I think that's when I got, or before the game. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. It was a fun time in Bridgeview.
Orlando away 2-2 with a PK win. That saw us draw. That we gave up a penalty. No, we gave up a corner kick. They scored off a corner, which might have been our only set piece goal given up all year. And then they scored a second goal, and then we had the last ditch.
Well, we had the Duvan.
The Duvan. The big ball from Jesus to Jude to Duvan and in.
Smash and grab.
And like I blocked it off there because this stretch saw us have a lot of games that could have been wins and became draws. This game also, or this block also, like ends our luck because Orlando has stolen points. It was pure. It was a lucky result. And it's also like one of the reasons why I don't really care that much that we dropped. I've got us down dropping 10 points because I think you can look at Huntsville at home. You can look at Orlando away. There's some others where you're like, well, but we also got a bunch of points that we probably didn't deserve. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, but like that was where the luck just ended because block 3, Carolina Core at home in June. That's a 2-1 loss. We were bad.
We were very bad. It might be I might have put our worst game as far as like what we created.
It was definitely our worst first half. It could have been worse.
Yes.
Crown Legacy at home. That's a 2-1 loss. Again, we actually played decently that game.
We deserved to win that game, period. We should have won that game.
We did not. Yeah.
We dropped 3 points there. We should have won.
Philadelphia away. That's a 3-1 loss. That includes a red card to Gene. This was an interesting game because we were victims to the rise of Kevin Sullivan a little bit. We also like had our chances in the first half to make that game fundamentally different.
I said I wasn't going to get emotional. I'm getting mad thinking about that one.
Like that's one of those things where you like against Philly, who ended up being the second best team in the East. Like you gotta put shit away, and we had our opportunities, and then like the whole game plan fell apart at halftime, and that was just that.
Well, I mean, once we got a red card, like
it fell apart at halftime.
We get a red card right after halftime, right?
It is like the 63rd minute.
It's a little later than I remembered. But yes, they dominated the second half.
We had a formation change at halftime. We made a sub. I forget what the reasons were, but like this, like that shifting the system, we lost the ability to do what was made us successful in the first half, although Correct. That success did not result in goals. And then we just got our ass kicked.
But it was the beginning of our slow switch, and then eventual permanent switch until Rod left us or got fired.
Semi-permanent.
But to the 3-man.
Yeah. So then we moved to Carolina Core. This was the midweek game in July. That's a 2-1 loss.
Oof.
That's just a brutal game. But like, I don't put it in the same category as the Carolina Core home game where we were just bad and deserved to lose. But like still drop points or however you want to classify that, because Carolina Core were clearly on a different track by that point in time. The first game we played, the game at home, not the first game, but the game in June was the start of their run. And that
you mean when we beat them the first time?
No.
You mean the second time?
In June.
Yes.
It was the start of their run.
Yep.
When we played them in July, I think they had won 3 straight or hadn't lost in 3, which for them was an accomplishment at the time. And it was an even game. There's a stupid handball that gets called that isn't really a handball for me. There's a bit of a fuck up at the back to make it 2-0 in the second half. We get one back. We can't, get at the second one. But like, it's just the 4th loss in a row. They come back home at the end of June and play one of the grittiest games I've seen. I ever saw a Rod Underwood team play. It was not, there were some chances in that game. Overall, there were a few, including a massive one that we weren't able to capitalize on. But like, there was some life, there was fight.
There was so much fight from a team that had been, you could see in their body language and how they played like down and downtrodden. And you could see how much winning that game like meant to them.
Like a 5th straight loss, and especially like coming back home.
We never get close to the playoffs.
Would have like, it'd have been done. And, and when we get the goal from an outside the box shot from Alex McGrath.
So good.
To win 1-0. We hang on for absolute dear freaking life.
They had all those first team players that played that game, and we mostly shut them down. I mean, they didn't score, so like we got it taken care of.
And Orlando, like at the time when that game finished, Orlando was bet down in like 10th, 11th. Look where they finished in the table.
Yeah, they're good.
I mean, like it just like that's the weirdness of the season, right? And then we finish out block 3 with Toronto home. And I'm blocking it here as opposed to somewhere else because there was just we were not good. We just weren't good. That being said, we got a goal in the first half. We survived an absolute onslaught, really on both sides of halftime, only to give away. I guess that was the second. That was a corner kick. So maybe we gave up 2 corner kick goals on the season. Toronto scores on a corner in stoppage time, and it finishes a 1-1 draw.
That one hurts.
When the PK shootout. That one hurt. Block 4. This is the interesting part, for me at least. We go down to Huntsville. We don't play particularly poorly. We play okay. It's not like amazing. It's not bad.
But our luck from the first game essentially comes back to bite us.
But our streak of luck,
our streak of bad luck continues.
Yeah. But we were fortunate against Huntsville
the first time. The very first game.
The second game was just an even little, not much happening dogfight that we happened to get the goal late to win.
Yes.
And the third game against Huntsville, the second one in Huntsville, they have a bunch of their, there were a few games into the new manager, or that was the first game for the new manager. It was their 4th of the season. I can't keep track. I think it was the first game.
Dude, I can't keep track of how many they played 54 players in the end of the year.
Something like that.
Come on, dude. Or made a game day squad.
It might have been the first game of the new manager. And like the permanent one.
It was. I remember now. It for sure was.
And so like some things were a little bit different about them. They had kind of switched goalkeepers by that point.
Bobby Dowd?
Something like that, yeah.
He's very good.
He's very good goalkeeper. He absolutely kept them.
Kept
them in the lead because we had a couple like big. We didn't create a ton in that game, but we created a few big things. And he did unbelievable stuff with those.
We had a really low percentage chance that that Alex still put on frame and almost in the corner that he saved. That was unbelievable. That was like one of those where we scored it. It would have been just a banger, and he just ended that. And then we had the 1-on-1 that he also saved. That was fucking excellent.
Yeah.
And those were the two kind of like quote unquote one big chance and then one like.
Yeah. And I think if I remember correctly, I think they dropped Ajajo back in.
Oh, Ajago was there, and so was Perez, who was there.
Yeah, so the big one was Jonathan Perez,
who scored their goal.
Two
goals.
Just one goal.
1-0. He scored the goal.
Who had just arrived from
LAFC,
from LA Galaxy, who ended up going straight to Nashville's senior roster, and they were using it as a minutes getting assignment for him. Because Perez, for some context, like is young. He's like 23. Most of his success has been in Next Pro for Galaxy, but he was on a senior roster spot, and they needed to clear a roster spot for Marco Royce. So Nashville works out a trade because Nashville will take literally anybody at this point, and so he was down, and was just really freaking good. He went on, by the way, afterwards for Nashville to like have some seriously good appearances for the first team. He's a good player, and he's too good for this level. And that's just one of those days where like a really good player just beats you, and that's life. Next game, Crown Legacy away. It's August again. Pretty even game.
This is the John Burke. This is the
masterclass.
The John Burke. He had a couple excellent saves, and then in the penalty shootout, he did the fucking thing.
Yeah, so
and this was shaved. This was shaved head John Burke. This was new John Burke.
So this is a pretty even game overall. Crown gets their goal, I think, early in the second half. John Burke does ridiculous things in about a 2-minute stretch.
Oh yeah,
to keep that game at 1-0.
It was the John Burke game,
and then I think Marcus subs in for the first time. Creates a 2-man with Medi. We get a nice ball from Milo at a fortunate bounce and like score to equalize. And then John Burke does heroics in the penalty shootout for an extra point.
And Marcus converts his first penalty.
Yeah.
Because he comes in and he's only in for like 5 minutes, and we create a little bit, we do a little bit, whatever. And I think we get the goal in that period of time. Mm-hmm. And then he also like takes the very first penalty and it was the coming back party for Marcus in that moment, because he converted that penalty like he does because Odunze goes like the right way and hard, and like he's fucking massive, including one of his saves. If you remember the Milo save on the...
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
It's unreal. And by the way, love Odunze. We've sung his praises like 6 times on this podcast, but Marcus puts that ball so hard that there's not a goalkeeper in the world that's getting off their line and to that side fast enough, because how hard he puts that and perfectly in the corner. It's so good.
Then we go to Miami, and we get the equalizer in the first half to make it 1-1. But like just overall,
we get played off the field.
We got.
No, that game should have been
played off the field.
The game should have been, to be clear, 3-1 or 3-0. It shouldn't have been 5-1. But that's how the cookie crumbles.
They created some really good stuff. Like if you look back at the XG in that game, it's our worst of the year. It's not particularly close. They were just better than us in every facet.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
This is the game that we go on the cruise afterwards on.
So it's interesting that you draw this as the point where the season was over. I disagree, because it was away. I agree that it was a harbinger, and because we got murdered, it probably really hurt our cohesion and confidence and whatever else. But we come back home the week after, and like it doesn't matter. It was 5-1. We lost, and it's an away game. And then we come home to the team that was bottom of the table, and we lose that game. It doesn't matter how we lose it. We still lose it. And that's why, for me, that was when our season ended. Because we had to win that Atlanta game. Like that was gonna be what showed us who we were. Were we able to beat the quote unquote bad team? And we weren't.
So we finished at 1.61 points per game.
1.61?
1.61. That's what 45 points gets you. In order to finish at 1.61 points per game, we had to take 10
of our last 12.
Mm-hmm. which is
why I said earlier it's a
redonkulous.
It's a C- because we got hot right there at the end and got a little lucky and did whatever else to do the thing.
So 1.61 times 4 matches is 6.44. We essentially had to run 3.5 points hot just to be in the running.
By the way, we also, that 1.61 includes the 10 of 12 we took. So that before that would have been even less.
Yeah.
So I am going with your point. I'm helping your point.
So I guess my point here is it is completely unreasonable for me, and this is why I delineated the Miami game as opposed to the Atlanta game. It is completely unreasonable for me to say, well, Atlanta's where it ended because of mathematically it's not where it ended. Atlanta functionally was that spot, but it is completely unrealistic to expect that this team could have potentially been in a position to go 13 of their last 15 points. When 1.61 was the line.
I agree. But I will also say if we get a draw in that game, which would have been an unfair result to us in a lot of ways, if we get a draw in that game.
In Miami?
No, at the Atlanta game.
Oh, okay.
We're in the playoffs, much less a win or a shootout win.
Yeah.
That was what we had to win to put ourselves in
That was the moment when I knew it was almost certainly over, was in Miami. And I was really glad that there was a beach and some Heinekens and Coronas.
Unlimited Coronas.
To finish that out, yes, Atlanta at home, 4-3 loss. And then Columbus at home.
One of our better performances of the year where we beat a team. Did they end up making the playoffs? Or ahead of us, or did they lose? Out and miss the playoffs?
Yeah, they made the playoffs. Everybody made the playoffs.
I was just making sure because they had that run of terrible results to finish out the season.
Yeah, they won on the final day.
Okay. Listen, I stopped paying attention the day the playoffs ended. So going back into this, the day when our season ended, which is coincidentally the day the season ended for everybody else too. I don't know why they don't play playoffs when we're not there, but I guess it's not worth it.
So Columbus 2-1 win. We go to New England. That's a 1-1 tie with a crazy PK shootout win, which functionally kept us alive.
Unless years off my life during that penalty shootout.
Then we get to midweek. The announcement is made on a Thursday that Rod is relieved of his duties, is leaving the club. We go to Toronto.
Still insane.
We win that game handily, 5-1, handily, with also some really great performances from a number of key players, including John Burke, if John Burke has a bad day, we may not be in the game for a stretch.
If John Burke has an average day, that game's 3-1.
Because the post-shot XG for Toronto is significantly higher than their pre-shot XG. And then we have Red Bulls at home on decision day, a 1-1 draw, a PK shootout win that did not matter.
But we played.
But we did it anyway.
We win the XG battle in that game, which we haven't talked about that game, but we're not going to review that game. But we win the XG in that. We are
2-1.
We're better than them.
We were the better team.
But you have to put the ball in the back of the net, and we didn't.
Not enough.
So then we finish tied for 6th, but on tiebreakers, as we talked about before, we were going to always miss out on the playoffs if we didn't clear our
inability to win games,
and because we were in it because of mostly goalkeeping. Though I guess I should give a little more credit to our boys who took the shots, but that's why we were in that position to begin with, even with that many points, because we had won 8 shootouts.
Yeah,
including that one's 8 shootouts.
So I'm going to do some analytical stuff,
and then I'm going to take you to the interesting stats, which I'm going to move so you can't read them right now.
Okay, I've got a time check right now of about...
We're about 40 minutes till you need to be walking out my door.
Correct. Okay, so XG4, we ended up at 1 point... This is all data from American Soccer Analysis, who I think you get their data from Opta.
Did we talk about that? We found out about
the
Chris data and the Sportico data?
We did. We haven't
talked
about that.
We haven't talked about this on the podcast yet.
We have not.
Originally, we were right, and then we thought we were smart, and we weren't.
No, Chris still does the XG. Still did the XG.
So in the post-game recaps where there is expected goals, it is in fact our internal number that Chris does. we at a certain point, which we said, I think on the last podcast we did in Toronto, hey, we think we figured it out. We think it's Sportico. We're fucking wrong.
It's just Chris.
It's just Chris.
Because he's a nerd and does it after the game.
It's good.
Now, he can do it pretty quickly because, like, shots are like, noted. So they can easily go through the video and be like, okay, what's shot, and then, okay, that gets assigned, that gets assigned. So it's not a crazy process, he told us.
I can't...
He told me after the Red Bulls game.
I can't imagine... Oh, interesting. I did not obviously speak with him after the Red Bulls. It is fascinating to me. Next season, now that Chris has been announced as coach, and we know that he's not going to be in an assistant role, when the season ended and we made it a little bit run, I kind of thought we might hire Chris, but I just suspected that we might keep him around in an assistant role, or I just don't know. He hadn't been a head coach before. So, like, I didn't have this, like, thought in my mind that he was going to be. I thought he might be the head coach. And I was like, I wonder if he was the head coach for a season, how many of these games would he be doing the XG for? And I'm going to be fascinated if he continues all this next season doing the expected goals during the season.
So
I'm sure he has his own reading of how he thinks a game went, but I wonder if he's so data nerdy that he's not going to let somebody else do it, that he's going to do his own just so he can, I don't know.
So this is a conversation for a different day.
It's a conversation for him.
Generally speaking, I want another data nerd.
Duh.
On the... At the club,
Duh.
Whether they work for the first team, like for the first team directly, or they work for the club.
Could not agree more.
In a different role, that's a different conversation. XG4. This is us on the season. 1.44 per match. That put us 12th in the Eastern Conference. If you want to go a little bit, I found this to be a little bit interesting. Before the coaching change, our average was 1.375, which you can round up to 1.38, and that would have actually been us 13th. So we ticked up a spot based on the XG created in the last two games.
That's what happens when you win the XG battle almost 2-1 in the final game, and you win the other XG battle like almost 4.
It was like 3-1, but yeah.
It just shows how much one game can change things when you go off, and we hadn't gone off in a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, points, 0.07, whatever it was. This is interesting.
Also gives a little bit of credence, not to get into it too much, but it gives a little bit of credence to the new manager bump.
Yeah.
Because we got a big new manager bump on the data side. We won both of the final games on the data side.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's true.
Now, I don't know how that would have continued, and if that would have continued, because we didn't fucking make the playoffs, but...
XG against 1.55. You'll notice that we were 0.11 on the bad side of that. 1.55 against is actually tied for 6th in the Eastern Conference. 6, 7, and 8 were all tied at 1.55 per match. So defensively, like,
we were good,
which we were average. But like we kind of knew.
There are 15 teams. 6th is 1 out of the top third. It's good.
6 to 8.
That's still above average. You can't say average. Average would be
8.
1 tick below that.
Would literally be 8.
Yeah, but there was 3 of us tied. So like the next one is not tied for 9th. The next one is literally
9th.
Yeah, you're right. I'm still going to quit. It's not average because we still finished 6th.
I would argue it was decent, but it's not good enough. But that's a different conversation for a different day. Okay. So this is something I found out just really, really interesting. And then we're going to do some, do you want to do fun facts next before we do? Okay. So our non-PK set pieces. So this is like corners, free kicks.
I wonder if throw-ins are included in those.
I don't think we had a shot directly off a throw-in. Our XG4 was 0.18 per match. That was 13th in the Eastern Conference,
which is not good enough.
Our XG against on set pieces, this again non-penalty set pieces, was 0.16. That was first in the East. Not only was that first in the East, that was first in the league.
That blows my mind.
Set piece defense was really good. We just didn't allow shots.
You know what?
Yeah.
For a season that wasn't necessarily full of the highest highs,
a nice
that's a great stat.
All right, Breezy, you're going to take us through some And let's run through these.
Matthew, where do you think we finished in yellow cards, with more yellow cards being good and less yellow cards being bad? We want to win the yellow card battle.
Well, I think I already know the answer to this one. We finished like fourth.
Finished in fourth with 76. I'm really bummed out.
76 yellow cards led the big parade.
We missed out. I think Miami ended up with like 9 more than us. They went on a tear to end the season.
That's beautiful.
I think they had 85. I'm just going to give you this. We were tied for 5th in most red cards. Colton Qureshi asked a question during the season whether I thought we had a discipline problem, this, that, or the other. I can now say at the end of the season, seeing where we were in yellow cards, which is not the very top, we were tied for 5th in most red cards. However, 3 of them were in one game, meaning we essentially had, if you take out that game, I know it's just one, but that's one for somebody coming on the field and one for scrum and one for like a foul that was horseshit. Like, you take away all those things, like I don't believe we have a discipline problem. I don't think we had a discipline problem all year. I think our yellow cards and our red cards were league average or better as far as like our how we acted with mostly discipline. We had some moments of dumbassery.
Everyone does usually.
But everyone does. And so like no problem. I have no issue with quote unquote team discipline.
I would bet right now, if we had 10 fewer yellow cards, if our team this year had 10 fewer yellow cards, we would have finished we would have lost a place in the table.
Agreed. We made a lot of tactical fouls. We finished, this is painful. Where do you think we finished in the most offsides called against us? Meaning in the table, if you had 100 offsides and the lowest person had 2 offsides, like that would be, so the more offsides, the higher your position.
I feel like we'll be pretty high on that list.
We're painfully high.
Are we like first high?
No.
Like third?
4th.
Okay.
Out of 30. We're 4th out of 30.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
By the way, we're 5th out of 30 and we're 4th out of 30 in the other things. And the yellow card's 4th and 5th in most red cards. That's out of 30. Those are all out of 30. Guess where we were in overall fouls committed? Fouls that we committed.
We committed a lot of fouls. Children fall over, referees feel bad, they call fouls. We were probably like top 5.
9th out of 30.
That's our problem.
By the way, need to get better.
We didn't foul enough.
Need to get better. Fouling is winning.
You know what that means? It means we weren't close enough to foul.
Buddy, you want to be really mad? Guess where we were in fouls committed against us, meaning fouls that were called that were committed against us.
Oh.
Out of 30.
Bottom 5.
24th.
Yeah.
Which means either the refs suck or we didn't put those players in bad enough positions. And it's probably mostly the latter.
It's going to be the latter for sure.
Although there were some games where the refs sucked, to be clear. We were 6th in fewest goals allowed with 42 out of 30. So 6th in fewest goals allowed. It's pretty solid. We were 16th in goals scored right in the middle, which is very clearly not good enough. But we scored 45. We were 12th place.
Yeah, and those are all out of 29.
Oh, there's not 30 teams?
No.
All right, we're 29. That's fine. And we were 12th place in goal difference with +3. So 12th out of 29 with +3 goal difference. These are just counting stats. These are not underlying stats.
Yeah. So the counting stats having +3 in goal difference, and you'll remember we were at like minus 2.5 in expected goal difference. So like a nice little gap there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we were tied. This goes along with the fouls committed. We were tied for second to last with 4 other teams, but tied for second to last with 3 penalty kicks drawn.
Minus 3 in expected goal difference. Sorry.
Got it. That means we finished above our...
It came back. It was drastic.
Oh, it was worse than that. Yeah, the second half of the season, we compressed it a lot.
Sorry.
Tied for second to last with 4 other teams with 3 PKs drawn in the league. Our PKs conceded were just right in the middle of the pack. I didn't want to count. There was 29 and there was no numbers, but we were just right in the middle of the scroll. So I have no problem with where we were for penalties conceded. Like I said earlier, 45 points would have had us tied for 5th in the West. It did have us tied for 6th in the East, but unfortunately, because it was a weird year, it didn't sneak us into the playoffs. And we finished 14th, which was tied for 10th overall, but 14th. I don't know how I have that in overall points with all 29 teams. I don't know how I have that. I guess I'm going to leave that. We finished 14th. We finished right in the middle. I don't know what I did there. I may have done some weird math. We're just going to leave that out. I'm not quite sure what I did.
I mean, like, it's not that crazy. We finished 9th in the Eastern Conference, but we had higher points than some teams that made the playoffs.
We were probably 14th. Yeah. I don't know how I have tied for 10th there written in there. Anyway, so I thought those were some interesting stats on the counting stats side. And yeah, let's talk about...
let's go through the goal scorers, the assisters real quick, and then we'll come back to give some awards.
Yeah.
So goal scorers this year, all of these goals and all of these assists are in the league because we didn't do anything in the Open Cup.
By the way, that might be the most irritating part of this entire thing is I keep forgetting the Open Cup existed this year.
Because it didn't. Mehdi Walmeri, 12 goals. Alex McGrath, 7 goals. Jesus Ibarra, 7 goals. Milo Garvanyan, 5 goals. Jalen James, 5 goals. Taylor Gray, 4 goals. Duvan Viafara, 2 goals. Ethan Corrin, 1 goal. Minjae Kwok, 1 goal. Callum Watson, 1 goal. On the assist side, these are all primary assists. You'll notice, and we've referenced this before on the podcast, that for whatever reason, MLS Next Pro reverted out of using some secondary assists in the actual assist number.
So it seems they're only using primary assists now and not MLS assists.
Correct. I think that's terrible, but that's a conversation for a different day. Primary assists.
And it took one away from Taylor. Taylor would have had 9.
Correct. Primary assists, Taylor Gray at 8. Milo Garvanyan at 7. Alex McGrath at 5. Jesus Ibarra at 3. Mehdi Walmeri at 3. Jude Arthur at 2. Luis Garcia Sosa at 2. Callum Watson at 2. Logan Brown with 1. Jalen James with 1. Andres Jimenez Aranzazu with 1. Marcus Nagelstad with 1. Joseph Perez with 1. Anatoly Prepelica with 1. And Carlos Rivas with 1.
God, that Marcus one was so beautiful.
It really was. Let's give some awards.
All right, Matthew. I would like you to tell me so we're going to do offensive MVP, defensive MVP. Those are pretty self-explanatory. And then we're also going to do workhorse player. We're leaving workhorse player open to interpretation. You can justify your workhorse thing however you want. I'll justify mine how I have, and you justify yours how you have. So I'm going to let you go first with your offensive MVP.
I'm going to go with Milo. 5 goals, 7 assists. I realize he's a left back, but also he was kind of a right back, and also he was kind of a left wing back, and also he was kind of a right wing back and a right winger. But more importantly, I think playing Milo at the left back position and his return to left back / left wing back from Columbus onward, and that 4-game stretch there, I think, I think like his ability to contribute on the offensive side of the ball was super, super important to how we wanted to play. And I think his contributions, both in goals and assists, gave us that extra something that we didn't have much of across the rest of the roster, if that makes sense. Like, your left back is not supposed to be 4th in goal contributions. Or maybe it's tied for... Taylor was at 12, Alex was at 12, Milo was at 12. Yeah, so tied for 2nd in goal contribution. That's your left back. And I think, yes, like 2 other players that were at 12 goal contributions. Like Mehdi was a couple more higher, right? But like what he brought to the table, what he allowed us to do offensively, I don't think could be understated. And for those reasons, he's going to go down with my offensive MVP.
Could not agree more. I love that. For all of those reasons, I almost picked Milo. This was the hardest one to choose. Spoiler alert, we agree on the defensive MVP, which we'll get there in a second. I picked Alex. Not just to be different. I picked Alex before you picked Milo, but Milo and Alex were kind of my 2, although we talked through a little bit when I was trying to pick, and there's definitely some other guys in there that definitely is an argument to be made for. There's a little bit of Jesus Ibarra erasure here, which is like our results you could have just done the blocks like when Jesus was healthy, when Jesus wasn't, and when Jesus returned, and then post Rod. You could have just done those blocks,
buddy. You could have.
But
that's a great shout, and we can maybe do a category for a player that we didn't give an award to.
Yeah. We'll do it after workhorse, or we can do an honorable mention if we want to at the end. But I settled on Alex McGrath because Alex McGrath had 7 goals. Alex McGrath had 5 assists. Alex McGrath played the 10. He played the 8. He played the 6-8. He played right wing, in which he was electric and actually made us good for a couple games by himself. He was our captain. He was our leader on the offensive side and still managed to contribute defensively massively, which gives him just a little tick up on my leaderboard. And I really thought this was going to be the year, if I could be just like a little too honest and telling myself for a second, I thought this was going to be the year that Alex was going to like struggle to be in the starting lineup. I thought he would be in there quite a bit, but like he would be the 3rd/4th midfielder. No, he was the first midfielder on written in pen, and he's going to be until he's not. He somehow went from a weaker, worser, yes, I said worser, league in Nisa and went to a stronger, better league and leveled up himself, offensively in particular. Yeah, he's my guy. Also, his underlying stats, he matches them, which I penalized a couple players in my thinking through this. I penalized a couple players whose underlying stats, maybe they got lucky on how many assists they got based on the expected goals, or they got lucky on how many goals they scored based on the expected goals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, he's my guy, and I would give him my offensive MVP. Matthew, you and I agreed that our defensive MVP was not one player, but 2 players. But since they played the same position, goalkeeper, we're giving to Gene and John as our goalkeeping duo. We got 8 extra points on the season. In large part, yes, our guys made their shots, but like the goalkeeping heroics mostly stopped. It wasn't a ton of misses, and a lot of the misses, quote unquote, the majority of those misses, if you remember during the season, were when John or Gene went the correct way, and those players adjusted, from my point of view, their shot to miss. So even when they maybe it was a quote-unquote miss and it wasn't even a save, it still was a save. We are completely out of the picture on the final day, essentially, if Gene doesn't get that heroics in New England, which would have put us an entire point back and would have changed the playoff scenarios to be, if we win, we still have to have help. And in which case, it was if we win, we were going to be through. And he was particularly heroic in that game. So do you have anything to add for the defensive MVPs? On the defense was finished tied for 6th, 6th, 7th, and 8th being tied, obviously, on expected goals against. But our defense was legitimately good this year. Or, you know, I guess if you want to be mean about it, way better than our offense.
That is a great way to do it.
But our defense, I'll put it much more politically correct and much nicer. Our defense kept us in so many more games, and our defense and our goalkeepers in particular, but also the whole defensive unit, the back 4 or back 3 plus the goalkeeper, made it so we had a chance to get to the playoffs on the final day, because throughout the season they kept us in so many games by being a good unit. Do you have anything to add to the defensive MVPs?
I have nothing to add. They were brilliant. They were fantastic. They're the only reason we ever really were in it at all. And yeah, can't say enough good things. I want to do one thing real quick. Actually, no, I'll do it as my honorable mention. Good, you're putting Jesus. Okay, my honorable mention is going to be Alex, and then I'll say why. Let's do workhorse first.
So I'm going to give you mine because mine's going to be nice and short. Okay. You already gave the entire argument for my workhorse player, which is Milo. For all the reasons you said, you know who he reminded me of that you pointed out, but now I cannot unsee it? Gabby Torres.
Oh, yeah.
He is not the fastest, though he's not super slow, but he's not the fastest. He's extraordinarily technical. He is so confident in the best possible way. Yeah, he did all the things offensively and defensively on the left back position, and for a long period at the right back position. And then he finished the season, you could argue, if he wasn't as hot, not even if you could argue, if he is not as hot in those last 6 games, we're not even close to sniffing the playoffs on the final day.
Yeah.
He was fucking excellent all season long, and I almost picked him as offensive MVP, but I'm putting him as my workhorse because he was the workhorse we could rely on all season on both sides of the ball. And he was one of the players written in pen essentially the entire season. all of our defensive core, I mean, if MVP like unit was a defensive core across the board of the guys who played all those minutes, whether it's Fareed, whether it's Duvan, whether it's Logan towards the end, whether it was Tolley, JP, Milo, that was kind of your crew of guys for the most part that played like most of the defensive minutes, plus the 2 goalkeepers. Am I forgetting somebody?
Wasn't listening.
And Logan came in at the end, obviously, for whatever. But like Milo was a rock amongst that crew and also as an attacker, and he is my workhorse player.
27 games played, 25 starts, 41 minutes. Games played is tied for second. Games started is tied for first, and I think he ends up second on the minutes played. Second. So like just a
excellent season. Give me your workhorse player.
I'm going to go with Andres. And I'm going to say that because he's the only player to play in every single game this season. And I mean the Open Cup included, but like he's the only player to play in every league game, all 28. Started 25 of those. He's our minutes leader at 2280. And Andres was brought in, started at the 6 for the first part of the season. We figured Jude was going to either replace him or they were going to maybe do a double pivot and maybe Andres play a little bit more of like the 8-10 kind of role. And he did a little bit.
You and I both thought Jude was going to push Alex out of the lineup to the bench, and it was going to be Callum and Alex, or potentially Callum and Andres. And that was going to be if we would have picked it towards the beginning of the season based on pedigree.
I think maybe in preseason. I think when the season started, I figured Alex was just going to play until Alex was dead. And then for a stretch
long may he reign.
And then for a stretch there, when Callum's injury happened, and he was out off the field for a significant amount of time, like I figured it was going to be Alex and Andres. And what ended up happening is, for whatever reason, like the midfield just wasn't working with that change. And Andres ended up just becoming just the permanent 6. And I think you see that going down the stretch.
Putting the club record signing
where Jude's just on the bench. And I thought he
won the Columbus game by himself.
Yeah. I thought he had a really good season. I thought he was integral to the way we play.
He was our most important player.
And that's why he's going to be my workhorse.
I love it. And I would have if you hadn't named him, I would have very much considered making him my workhorse.
So the stats, by the way, are he didn't have any goals and he had 1 assist, right? I'll point out, I've got him down for 6 hockey assists here.
From the 6.
From the 6. Yeah. Just so like,
did he take a single penalty shootout?
I don't think so. I mean, like maybe, but
How much
I
you
don't think
he
so.
would have Panenka'd?
That's probably why he didn't take one.
So Colombian.
All right.
My guy. Yeah, I agree with that. I chose somebody else to obviously Milo to make myself a little bit different, and because I wanted to include Milo there, but Andres is a great shout.
Let's do the honorable mention. We're coming up on time right
now. Mine is Jesus and it's simply based on this. The record with Jesus and the record without Jesus is stark. Leave it at that. There's nothing else to be included there. I almost picked him as my offensive player. I considered him as my workhorse player, but honestly, because we used the title workhorse, I wasn't going to do a guy that was injured for half the season. Sorry, Jesus. Sure. But he was arguably our most important player offensively and all season, because you can just see the difference in the wins and losses with or without him.
I'm going with Alex McGrath.
Go.
And for all the reasons that you mentioned about offensive MVP and all the stuff in contributions in midfield and all the things like that. And Alex is up to now. You ready for this? Alex is up to now 90 appearances for CFC. That puts him tied, or I'm sorry, not tied. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That puts him 6th all time. He will pass Luke Winter, assuming plays next year. He'll pass Luke Winter in a couple of games. He'll pass Richard Dixon a game after that.
Where is he on the overall assists?
Marcus is also at 93 appearances. So like he's got a really good shot here to move into 3rd all time very quickly.
He's the guy that a season and a half ago I would have said, well, if Alex McGrath sticks around, but he probably won't. I would have said like for the chance to pass Zeka. And like now Alex is like the guy who's going to pass Zeka unless something changes and we really like, I don't know.
He's going to need to be here next year and the year after.
If he stays healthy and continues starting at the rate that he's starting at, or just continues playing, which by the way, now we're jinxing it, but I've seen no evidence that he's not going to continue doing exactly what he's doing. He'll be the all-time appearance leader at some point.
He is at 23 goals and 19 assists in club history.
Assists-wise, that should put him at like 5th all-time or 4th all-time.
That puts him tied for 4th. His next assist will move him into 3rd. His next goal will be 24, and that will tie him with Zeka for 4th all-time. You're talking about a guy that's like ostensibly like, 4th in goals, or what is it? Yeah.
4th in goals, 4th in assists.
5th in goals, 4th in assists, and
5th all time. 6th in appearances.
Currently in appearances. And like all that changes really quick with a goal, a couple goals, a couple assists, and a few appearances.
Also, he's the guy that went to App State. So he's perfect for the old school MPSL team that we were when we had mostly guys that didn't have the best quote unquote pedigree.
Yeah, no, 100%. And by the way, like a kind of player that we're going to have to start like recruiting pretty heavily again in this new era. Okay,
let's blow through some mailbag here. We touched on, I'm going to go ahead and mark off. We touched on Michael's spreadsheet a little bit. If anybody wants it, you should hit up Michael. Is Michael on Twitter? I feel like Michael's on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter so very often, so I don't remember what his Twitter is. But
okay, so we talked about the points dropped. We talked about like the feelings about the league a little bit. We can talk more about that in a future podcast.
We talked about you just put it this way. You have it down that we dropped 10 points that you feel like we should have gotten, but also you and I both feel like we picked up 6 or 8 points that we shouldn't have. So like call it a wash. We finished essentially where we should have.
So I'm not going to do this next question that Bill and Justin both had. We talked a little bit about it. We'll talk more about it in the future. I'm not going to do this question about grades from Ross because we kind of already did it. Some of you had questions about contracts for individual players. We're going to wait until roster news. I do keep a list, like just a running list of everything the club announces about players. So like when they renew a contract, or if they're on a 1+1, if they're on a 2+1, whatever it is, we keep a list of that.
So we know,
but we're so close to actual decisions that we'll just talk about it all later. Which leaves us with a reminder about the news about Chris being hired as sporting director.
Better calm down.
As being hired as head coach. Notably not sporting director included in that title.
And we have both heard that they are quietly seeking a sporting director.
Yeah, I mean, interviewing even. So Topher Kirsting asked, does this mean we have an unannounced sporting director? And the short answer is no, we don't.
I don't believe so. I believe that Davis and the board are acting as sporting director currently, because we don't have one, and they have confirmed Chris in their role as quote unquote sporting director. Or if you don't have a sporting director, you can also just have a head coach, and the chairman or the board or whatever can act as sporting director.
Let's do this next question. We're not going to do it justice for time, just because I got to go here. But Justin asked, would you have preferred to see us go through the process to hire a sporting director and then fill head coach, or are we better off trying to solidify the ranks where we can get a jump on what's going to be an aggressive recruiting campaign?
So we talked very briefly about this, and then we said, let's talk about it on the podcast, because you and I actually disagree on this question. So do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
You need to go first on this.
So, I believe...
Do it quickly.
...that we could have ended up hiring a coach, depending on how the sporting director... So if we had a sporting director in place, ideally, in an ideal world, we would have had a sporting director in place whenever they decided they were going to hire another sporting director, instead of Rod being sporting director permanently, semi-permanently, which could have, or should have... maybe should have is not the right word. Could have been 3 months ago. So if we have... or whenever they decided, but I'm just meaning like assuming they decided it months ago, since we know they're doing like interviews and stuff, like it's got to have been a while ago. And if we had somebody in place already, I would say, let's do a coaching search in the first few weeks of the offseason. However, we don't have one in place that we know about. And so it's my belief that we don't have one in place. Therefore, two things. Number one, I want some stability going forward. What I don't want is for us to end up with a fucking sporting director hire in December or January, whenever the right candidate comes along, or it gets through the process or can move here, because if you're hiring somebody that's already got a job, there's a million things that can go wrong. If we wait and then we hire a head coach after that, we could lose a season based on not having, if you remember, there have been, think about Rod Underwood's first stint at Stumptown, where he put together a team in like 4 weeks or whatever it was to start their season. It could have been our like very awkward rollover period here if we don't get some continuity with someone who can help make the roster decisions, which I assume, since we've hired Chris, that he did, though I don't know. But I assume that since we hired him, he at least had some input on what went through, or opinions given, and then somebody else made the decisions, right? I want continuity, and I want someone who knows Chattanooga culturally and on the field, and so I would rather have that person in place. And then, look, I don't know if Chris got did they say in their article how long his contract is? I don't know if it's a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, whatever it is, but let the sporting director come in, let the sporting director, whoever it is, take their time to develop, to bed in, to get ready, and then let them make the next decision on whether Chris stays or whether Chris goes, on whether Chris is the coach for the future. But I like a younger coach that's been here for a minute. My hope is that he keeps the rest of the staff around, and that they hire whoever needs to come in addition, since there's one less staff member currently with Rod gone, and let's build off of something that we've already done, as opposed to just starting over and going, well, we got to get the right guy here, and then let's see if in the offseason we can sign the right number of guys with a really compressed time period.
So I'll take the opposite point of view. Not that I have a problem with Chris at all, but like we're hiring the goal is to hire a sporting director who's going to shape the very future and build the foundation of Chattanooga Football Club, the football department, up and down from the men's first team, the women's first team, down through the academy, really for the first time, like holistically doing that with support and investment. In an ideal world, you hire that person first, and then you tell them to go like, okay, your first act is like, start building that. And you start with the first problem in front of you, which is that, men's head coach. Ideal worlds are ideal for a reason, because they're not always reality. And what I think reality turned out to be is that number one, we have a guy in Chris who the club clearly thinks a lot of, or they wouldn't have hired him, and decided that like they would rather build around him and maybe take longer with the sporting director process, maybe say, hey, we did the first part of your job for you, whatever that might be. But like they decided that like Chris is worth keeping and investing in. And I think, is it the most ideal process of doing things? No, I don't think so. But also, this is big club shit, because for a long time, well, really for the last 3 years, all things in football were done by Rod. Mm-hmm. That was the job we hired him for. One of the biggest pieces of growth as a club is that the club starts making decisions about its future. That the club, and I mean, from the chairman to the CEO to just the people all around, that we, the board, like we grow as a club in knowledge and experience and understanding, so that if you've got the right person for the head coaching job, as an example, who happens to already be on staff, that you can make that call and get that done and do all of the other things that need to be done. So like start working as a club to build those foundations. And then you bring in someone to further that work and to do it better. That's big club shit. We joke sometimes about being a big club, being a massive club, all those things. But like
It's not a joke to me, sir.
That's the start of like actually having those understandings and, you know, being able to make calls about, I mean, because like you're going to set budgets and stuff like that anyway. Like you have to have some knowledge base to do those things. You have to learn like where to even begin, how to set things out. And so like is it the most ideal process? Maybe not.
Also, what we
But
don't,
I think
we don't know if we interviewed or looked at other guys. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. But like, I think it's the belief that we have the right person in Chris.
Also, we
and
know
that person
Chris
is worth
investing in and giving a chance,
putting our trust and investment in.
By the way, I think aspirationally we do want to be a club, as we've said many times, where guys can grow and learn, and hopefully Chris crushes it here and then moves on from here into as a coach in big MLS, like as we would have loved for Rod to do.
Yeah.
And we obviously wish Rod nothing but the best, but like now we get a chance to have one of our own. This isn't Chris's first season here now.
Yeah, it'll be fourth.
So like, I don't know if he's the right guy because we don't know what the results are going to look like next year. We have two games with Chris as head coach. However, we do have a lot of seasons of knowing him and of knowing how he is and of success. Rod Underwood's teams this year was not the best year. It got him fired in the end. But Rod Underwood had a lot of success here too. A lot of wins. I went back and listened to part of our thing. We were very, very good in like and a lot of things last season and the season before and whatever else. So it's going to be interesting, but I'm really happy to know who the next coach is. And I really feared, I hadn't said this out loud on the podcast, but I really feared we might go a long time because we were trying to hire a sporting director. We're going to go a long time without a head coach, and I'm glad we have somebody steering the ship, and I hope whoever they hire, obviously is the right guy, but now, or girl, but the right person for sporting director, they can now have a little bit more time to figure out who that person is.
And get it right, because that person, yes. I want to be around for a while.
And whether it's a week from now, or a month from now, or 6 months from now, they got to get the right person, and right now, hopefully we've got the right coach, and it is not, we are not going to hurry up and get a sporting director. At least logically, we're going to hurry up and get the wrong sporting director because we need to hire a men's team coach.
Pod business, real quick. Roster news is probably coming soon.
Coaching news is out, which I did not expect because I assumed we were doing a coaching search. So like going to be real soon, probably.
Like roster news is coming soon. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't have a timeline for you. Hopefully, it's not out when you drop this podcast later today.
Probably will be.
But we'll come back. We'll talk about the roster news. We'll say player goodbyes.
Send us your high moments, y'all. Send us your high moments
for individual players,
for any player,
all the things. And then we'll try to get Chris on at some point, which we've not talked to anyone about, including Chris. So like we'll have to send that request out. And then we're going to try to like start the off season. We need to bring AB back to finish his story. There are a couple other people I want to get on to interview. We'll start talking about, player transactions, weird quirks. If you've got off-season podcast ideas, let us know. We're all ears.
I'm so excited.
It's going to be a good one.
It's silly season now.
But for now,
thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. Catch you later.